Hey everyone, welcome to Tuesday's Tech Strong Gang. We're live on Tuesday. We're live every day of the week. Well, Monday to Friday. We don't do it Saturday and Sunday. But welcome to today's show. We've got a lot to talk about. We've got a great gang to talk about it with. Let me introduce you to our gang for today. We have got Sid Nag. Sid, good to see you.
Good to see
Kate
you,
Scarcella. Hey, Kate. Hey, that Still Cyber podcast episode's up. We'll be promoting it. It played yesterday on Tech Strong TV. We've got Chris Blask. Looking good, Chris. And, of course, Mike Vizard. Mike, how are you today?
I'm doing well. It's a little chilly, but all good.
You know what? It's even chilly in Florida today, so we're got no sympathy.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
It's relative. It's relative. I get that it's relative, but it did. You know, it was 80 degrees yesterday, and then at night the wind came in, and geez, it's got to be in the 50s today. But it's going to be I heard it's going down to 38. My wife tells me over the weekend.
Wow! Did you break out an actual sweater? Where are we going with this?
Well, I guess I did. I did make ready some sweaters for the weekend. You know what they say, right? Smallest violet in the world. But anyway, speaking of cold, it looks like MCP, which has been a darling since it came out about a year ago now, starting to show some warts. Mike, what's the story?
So under the heading of, why we can't have nice things, but a lot of folks have started to deploy their first wave of Model Context Protocol, MCP servers. These are the servers that provide access to data sources, to AI agents and AI applications. It's originally developed by Anthropic, and now, it's being advanced under the heading of the Linux Foundation. But cybersecurity researchers, surprise, surprise, have discovered these MCP servers and are testing them, and you'll be sad to hear, but there are actually flaws in these things, in the first wave of these things, and it looks like, we might have some issues. And Kate, I'm wondering what your thoughts are here, but did we kind of rush this MCP thing out once more time?
Oh, man. So what caught my attention is that the new AI vulnerability is where it shows up. We're spending a lot of time securing how AI agents are asked to do things, but the real risk is emerging in how they actually operate once they're running. This distinction matters because it shifts AI security from prompt problems to system architectural problems. And I think for me, it's like, what the heck? How can we be surprised? I mean, this whole, it really is Groundhog's Day. And I know people are going to get tired of me saying this, but we've seen this. This AI is basically augmented our augmented selves in how we're doing this. And how we are running AI agents. It's just that we're doing things, but we're doing them faster. And then we're surprised that the same vulnerabilities that they were before are showing up today. And it's like, I don't get it. It's the same architecture. So what's the surprise here, folks? That's my question. What's the surprise? Work with me here. Help me understand. What's the surprise?
I mean, it just boggles my mind that we develop protocols today without intrinsic security mechanisms built in. Like, have we not learned from this before? This reminds me of that Capital One breach that happened on Amazon. Remember that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I do.
Where everyone was blaming Amazon, and then there was an Apache server those guys were running, and they had left some sort of SSRF flag on to test, and they never turned it off.
Yeah, this exactly, Sid. Yes.
It's like, it's unbelievable. And the fact that you have, essentially with agents, so the proliferation of all these agents, creating so many new attack surfaces. It reminds me of my networking days, right? Where you inject a new network element to the network, and not only do you need security built into that element, but you also need the networking protocols to have intrinsic security mechanisms built in, right? IPsec and all that. That was the genesis of IPsec,
right? And
here we are developing an MCP protocol today, and we haven't learned our lessons. Come on, guys. It's insane.
And it's not surprising, though, right? It's like you say, Kate. These overlook in my short tenure in this over the last couple of decades, we've been saying we should do these things, and there's a lot of yes buts. Yes, but that's really hard, and the risk is. And we keep coming up with compensating controls are good enough and whatever. But I don't know if there's layers below this. I think we're driving down to the bedrock on these issues, right? Yeah, that you have to do this, and there are no yes buts. And look, big fan of MCP. We use it all the time. Agents running around doing all sorts of things. But if you're not tracking, if you're not authenticating, authorizing, and tracking the results of everything and checking across it, like good operational technology, power grid people do, and build serious systems that are really going to be important, you do them a certain way. That in cybersecurity and information technology, we have been just saying, yes, but we'll put this in here right now, and you can count on not at the speed, not at the scale. No.
Yeah.
So Alan, let me ask you this though: do you think that there's some irony in the fact that we have spent billions over the last, I don't know, countless numbers of decades trying to secure data, and then along comes an MCP server, and we're like, yeah, sure, just bidirectional open transfer, and security be damned.
Well, you know what I'm doing right now? I'm looking for my string of pearls to clutch. Shocked. Let me just frame this up for you here. I've got security people upset that we didn't think about security and just rushed headlong, torpedoes be damned, into the abyss. Right? You've got this whole MCP protocol that literally is a year old. It's a year old. I think it came out last December, so maybe a year and a month. And within 3 months, it was the de facto standard for how AI agents are going to communicate with our data, with our infrastructure, with each other. You're blaming tigers for having stripes.
Yeah.
Right? This is the way of the world in IT. We do it, we get it, we do it fast, we get it out there. We'll fix it later. And then we find out about the security flaws. The security people clutch their pearls. And we patch as we can until the next flaw comes out or until the next thing goes. Go ahead, Kate.
Yeah, no, okay. So first of all, I'm not clutching any pearls, okay? Because I'm not surprised. Like, one of the things that I've been saying is that we need to really, before we just launch, I mean, security has been an afterthought for decades, right? I mean, Sid, you talked about networking, being, part of the network. I mean, I just remember walking into very large organizations and being like, okay, clear text everywhere. And you're just like, the same thing is basically happening. And I want us to really take a pause, because we've already seen this story played out. We know what happens. We're going to be creating all these cybersecurity tools, doing bolt-on, blah, 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 blah. We've seen the story. Why can't we actually write the ending on this? I don't understand it. Chris,
right. The stand up for security piece, right? And what non-security people think is that security people are out here, pushing the perfect thing, that there's a perfect thing we're not getting to. And Alan, you've walked on the decks of my boats. I've done this show on 2 handmade solar-powered boats that I slowly sailed up and down the coast of Florida for 3 years with hurricanes and madness. And you can vouch, those were not perfect boats by any stretch. We're not trying to build perfect cybersecurity by any stretch. We're not going to make perfect MCP. I don't frankly care if MCP is secure or not. I don't expect that it is. I will run in a way that its insecurities, known or unknown, won't sink my boats. And we can build these systems. Security people actually know this really well. We're really pragmatic. It's the non-security people looking over at us and saying, I thought you wanted where's the perfect? There is no perfect. There's no perfect. Boats sink sometimes, have to. I don't know. We can build this well. It's not about vulnerabilities.
So let me ask you this then. So this whole nonsense that we bang the drum about called security by design, just flat out bullshit or what?
Hey.
Yeah, I mean, I'm appalled that the commercial vendors didn't bother to harden this protocol on their own, right? I mean, it's one thing having a protocol as a standard. It's another thing where Anthropic, the Git MCP server had this flaw with prompt injection chaining, right? And then in the case of Microsoft, the market down MCP server had a problem with SSRF. So hey, okay, the standards guys go and do their own thing, they develop a standard, but as a commercial vendor, it's your responsibility to harden these protocols. And they didn't do this. I mean, that just it's just strange, I think. So maybe we need better collaboration between commercial vendors to look at these problems up front and go beyond the standards, but agree to some sort of way to speak to each other from a commercial vendor connectivity perspective, for lack of a better term, that has these sort of hardening functionalities built in, right? So maybe that's the way to go. I don't know.
Well, you look at Anthropic people watching the show, like it's a good company, good folks. It's the motivation cycle, right? For everything I just said, as a security person, I expect flaws. However, I look at how we produce things and said, you're exactly right. What is the motivation stack in developing and releasing that? I think everybody involved did great work. Love the code, but is our production and motivation checking the conversation? Is that appropriate? And the answer is no.
So is that? I'm wondering if there's a cost associated with doing these things, and because the AI adoption is still mostly a vendor conversation and less of a consumer conversation, the cost factor is something people are not thinking about, and therefore they don't want to jack up the cost by creating this additional hardening in the protocol, and that's resulting in these kinds of disasters, right? I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
I think that is a possibility, but I think the bigger motivator here is there's a gold rush going on, and everybody wants to be the first one in the creek panning for gold, and you know what I mean. And so, this MCP, we got to get an MCP server out. Mike, how many pitches have we gotten from PR agencies over the last year announcing that one of their clients has now had their own MCP server out?
Thousands, and I can't wait to see which one of them winds up on the front page of some report somewhere saying that their platform was the very one used by cyber criminals to steal all kinds of interesting sensitive data.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, this is, but let's not blame AI. This isn't an AI specific issue.
No.
This is a pervasive issue within technology, within development, where as much as I've never seen a survey that didn't have security in the top 3 priorities, right? It's always in the top 3. But as many of those surveys as we've seen, the fact is, if it gets in the way of getting stuff out to market fast, it loses.
Always. And I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead.
That's the point right there.
No, let me ask you what the outcome is. So here's the thing. Do we go back and quote unquote fix this protocol, or are we going to just add another overlay of security on top of it to make it more secure? And then
it'll be continued to be fixed. It's evolving and extending, and it'll be fixed. But this is why, look, one of the biggest things in security I've seen over the last 10 years is the move from pure prevention to resilience. Right? And if that's what you mean by putting a layer of abstraction or something in, maybe that's one way of providing some resilience. But, smart security people have moved over to resilience, saying, hey, we're not going to stop trying to prevent things, but stuff's going to happen. And when stuff happens, we've got to be prepared.
Mm-hmm. And then I got to go hunting around for every MCP server and client that's out there. And then I got to add some stuff on top of it to secure it. And it's a lot of work for creating for these people.
Yeah, but you know what? We're getting rid of all these junior people. We got to keep jobs here.
And it's not on top, it's under, it literally, the UI died last year, right? The user interface, the entire internet is gone. And it's struggling along. We're trying to recreate it, adding more layers on top. And Mike, you're exactly right. This cannot be solved, this particular issue or security, by layering more on top. We need to build it right underneath. And, Alan, you're right. It's got to be resilient.
But I think there's an opportunity here. There's a market opportunity. My boss at Bell Labs once told me, network management is an artifact of somebody who made an error in building the protocol, right? So if you didn't have the right network protocols, you needed management on top of that. So it's like the idea of a service mesh or a new sort of overlay capability or whatever, MCP management, if you want to call it. I mean, there's an opportunity for tool vendors to go make a run at that and make tons of money, right? I mean, it's
absolutely. We'll end on Sid's optimistic note here, right? I'm in this room full of horse manure. I know there's a pony here somewhere. All right, let's jump to our next. Let's jump to our next one. Breaking the AI lock-in. This is a shot at NVIDIA. Mike, what's the story?
Yeah, this is kind of interesting. I think it's still in the realm of computer science project, but a fellow on the Reddit forums that AMD has set up is claiming that he used Claude from Anthropic to essentially find a way to reverse engineer some of the CUDA code so he could port it and run it on the AMD AI accelerators instead of NVIDIA's GPUs. And I think we've talked about the idea in the past that, people will use AI to reverse engineer all kinds of interesting things. But I guess, Chris, when you look at this, what's your take on, are we going to see a lot more of this stuff? And do you think that, people will start porting frameworks to different AI accelerators as a result?
Yes. It's so a week or two ago, I think I shared on this series, I was talking to somebody who in the past had broken a lot of license, software license codes, and had that dark past sort of person, always fun. But they said something to me that said, there's no point in doing that anymore. Why bother breaking a license key if you can't have access to code? Just build your own. Just express the intent to have this functionality through a properly put together AI system, and you will get that code. And that's where we're going. And you can do it now. I do it all the time, right? And it's not a matter of reverse engineering. It's just saying, I want this set of functionality, add this to what we have already, do it in the way, we always do it, so I can trust it. And when it blows up, it's not going to take us down with it, and you're done. So the whole idea of being a vendor is different, right? And I've been there, seen it, done it. Here's the license key and so on and so forth. I've been arguing since the beginning, since the early 90s, that it's really about relationships. And this, I guess at this age, I am here for the war stories. But in Atlanta, the very first day of launching the BorderWire firewall server, these two folks came up, asked two sets of really good questions. And they came back and asked another question. I'm like, I really don't know the answer to that. And on my feet, I said, look, if you buy this firewall product, you can build one. But what you're really buying is a relationship with people who do this for a living. And when and if there's a vulnerability found, they will live on caffeine and anger until it's fixed. That's what's valuable, not the ability to have the code. Now, 30-something years later, we've gotten used to this idea that you're my customer and I've got you, you're locked into my ecosystem. Those days are over. If you don't have a customer relationship, you will not have customers.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, I think it's going to take more than a relationship. I think what we're looking at here is just such a major disruption in not just open source software, but all software, right? No less than Patrick Dubois, who gave DevOps its name, posted something on LinkedIn the other day I commented on, that all these tools he was using, these open source tools, a lot of them haven't been being updated lately. There's not a lot of new code being added to the project or so forth. And he reached out to some people. And it's because they were taking the open source code into their Claude code or whatever, and saying, hey, this is the code base, but I want to add this functionality. and it does it for them, and it works pretty damn good. And they don't have to rely on the community or rely on the vendor to update that code. Chris, what you're saying, and maybe you don't want to say it because you don't want to get in trouble, but you could say, hey, I like what Datadog does on observability, and it uses OTel and these other things. Build me an app similar to that uses this.
So play that through for a minute. Sid, I'm going to ask you this question because I think you're close to it. So does this turn all the software publishers into, the 1970s equivalent of music publishers trying to figure out who's using cassette tapes to steal music? Because, they're going to be like, hey, who used my code, or who used my code to inspire this code, that, and is that even feasible to discover?
Yeah, I think there's definitely the element of what you just mentioned that jumps out at me when I read about this announcement. But I think if you look at NVIDIA's CUDA, right, it's been dominant. Why has it been dominant? Is because, years of tooling, libraries, and the investment that actually makes switching out of the NVIDIA ecosystem extremely challenging, right? So I think the idea of Claude's code ability to port an entire CUDA-based capability into AMD's ROCm in 30 minutes essentially assails the NVIDIA CUDA moat in many ways, right? So I don't know if I answered your question directly, but I think it's a good thing because that reduces the dependency of the AI workloads strictly on NVIDIA's CUDA functionality. That's in a lock-in. I mean, I know we often talk about NVIDIA's CUDA functionality as a Switzerland of sorts that transcends
Switzerland,
multiple LLMs from different vendors, right? So there's that. But in a way, it's also a very lock-in moat that people cannot get out of once you get into that. So when Claude does something like this, where they take that and put it into a AMD ROCm, in 30 minutes or less or whatever, I think that's a good thing. If that's sort of my take on it.
You know what? I just did an interview with my friend Pavel Baron, Platform Engineering Labs, and he used the term infrastructure builder. And I said, Pavel, don't you mean platform engineer? He said, no, this is much bigger. He said, today we're all builders. We're all builders. We're all software builders. We're infrastructure builders. We are music builders, creative builders. And that right there is the secret sauce of AI. It turns us all into builders. It turns us all into software engineers. It turns us all into developers. It turns us all into publishers. That's scary.
Yeah, I think AI tools.
But
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Kate. I was going to make a point with follow up with Alan's point, which is essentially, I think with this kind of stuff, AI tools might actually drive more competitiveness, right?
Sure.
Ecosystem. So, to your point about Alan, about music builders and that analogy, I think this is really part of a broader trend where AI enhances developer productivity, right? So the more the merrier, the more folks can participate in this ecosystem, and that's a good thing.
And that is, that's a great thing, I think, because it really does, I think, bring in the original intent when we started to think about computers. And Chris, I'm sure you can understand this part about the democratization, right, of digital devices. And I mean, that's something that I think we who have been doing this, I guess all of us on this call have been doing this for a really long time, understand that original intent. And I think AI actually does that for us. I think it equalizes this field that for some never even imagined, never even imagined that they could do something like this. So I think it's a great equalizer. And what I'll say is that when you were going down through your list, Alan, I noticed that you didn't mention cybersecurity. So I still think that cybersecurity is an afterthought, unfortunately. But what I do think is that my hope is that there's code that should be thrown out. And my hope is that as we become more productive citizens in this augmented selves that we are becoming, that we dump the bad code, that's my hope. So in all this.
I have a question for Alan. How does anybody make any money in a world where I can just look at somebody else's software and just decide by intent to create my own version of it and I'm probably not even using their core source code because, well, I'm just copying the intent.
Their functionality.
Let me take that one because
Go ahead.
This is back to my old war story. It's like you could have built a firewall yourself with open source code before the firewall market started. Most people don't because that's not their expertise, and we're not going to automate the entire universe. We'll automate a lot of parts. And if it's scary to you, look, freedom of speech is scary. Open source is scary. Democracy is scary. It's much, much easier. I don't know if any of you know any folks who grew up under the Soviet Union and so forth, but it's a really clear when you're 40 years old and the wall fell, you never adjusted. Too many choices. It's much easier to live inside a controlled environment. And if I'm scared because my position is threatened as a journalist, a professional or whatnot, maybe I should be. Maybe I've gotten a little comfortable. Is there no value left in human activity anymore? That's silly. There's lots.
Is there no decency, Senator? Yeah.
No, but great point, Chris. I love it. Absolutely.
Yeah, but I mean, and that's exactly what I was getting at.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, but I'm gonna let me give you some good news so we don't end this on a pessimistic note.
I thought that was optimistic, but what do I know?
Yeah, I thought so too.
Well, it's optimistic in terms for the everyman. But if if you're a shareholder in some tech companies right now, what are you burning your stock? But here's the deal. Let's take music, for instance. I could use AI and I could create some synthetic music. And it may be good. You may like what I create. It's going to write the words for me. It's going to write the melody, and I'm going to play it. I may have an AI person singing it. And you're going to say, damn, that Alan's creative. But then take those same tools and put them in the hand of a musician, of a professional who's from that vertical. And the synthetic music they turn out's probably on whole a hell of a lot better than mine. The same thing, putting coding tools in the hands of a professional developer versus a hack. The same thing, putting writing, journalism tools in Mike's hands versus someone who's not a writer, right? So I think while it's a great equalizer across the board, it also is a great enhancer of where your skills already lie. So if you already have an affinity and a skill set, this enhances that.
Yeah,
I think that's something to think about.
I think again back to I love your music analogy. I mean, yeah, you can create all the music you want using AI.
But you ain't Beethoven.
Yeah, but those are sort of you're creating music based on maybe somebody else's musical works. But I think the best music is created by musicians who can improvise in real time, right? And that is what I always tell. There's always this discussion on LinkedIn too. I don't know if you guys follow whether AI can replace the analyst community like us, right? I think it's almost impossible because what we do as analysts is not just follow a certain sequential path like what a transformer model would follow in terms of sequence transduction. But we do real-time context switching when we're talking to a client, right? And that's the same with a good musician. A good musician will improvise in real time. They will not follow an AI algorithm to create music. And I think that's the difference. So I think human expertise still matters in all aspects of AI, in the AI world and high-performance computing, in this case, GPU computing, right?
Mike, you want to say something?
I was just going to say, and I'll probably end this for here, but I would say, just because AI tells me how to perform surgery doesn't mean I should do it on myself because, well, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should.
Absolutely. All right, let's jump to our next segment. Moving in maybe a little less AI, but cloud native clarity. See, the CNCF, good folks at CNCF recently came out with a survey, Mike, about Kubernetes clusters.
Yeah, and they're pointing out in the latest report that I think it's 82% of the respondents said they're running Kubernetes in production. Now, that varies widely from one organization to another, and not all of them are even running containers apparently, but it does seem we've reached some sort of crossing of the proverbial Rubicon when it comes to finally using Kubernetes. It's only taken a decade or so, and there's probably still a long way to go here. But Sid, you're an analyst. What's your assessment of what's going on in this cloud native computing marketplace as we know it?
Yeah, I mean, cloud native is such a broad term. It's it means so many different things to so many different people. But I think one thing this highlights is that containerization and Kubernetes utilization is definitely the de facto standard for orchestrating, containerized apps today, right? It's no longer as an emerging technology, right? I mean, yeah, there's still virtualization clusters floating around, and there's plenty of those. But I think this really highlights what does this do in terms of level of adoption for teams that previously resisted Kubernetes, right? So we have this whole evolution of Kubernetes that ran on bare metal versus running on virtualized environments. And the natural thing to do was to run it on virtualized environments because nobody wanted to rip out the underlying layer, although it was more efficient to run it on bare metal, right? So I think really this really brings out the fact that Kubernetes is really part of the broader cloud operating system or the operating model. And I think the survey also highlights how organizations should prioritize investments across the whole cloud native construct of things like service meshes and CI/CD pipelines, observability, and all of that. And then finally, I think, what does it do for the AI workload, right? And I think Kubernetes definitely is going to enhance running AI workloads, especially in the world of agentic, because of the efficiencies that are built into that Kubernetes layer, right? So running an operating system coupled with GPUs and software, we talked about CUDA, all of that, orchestrating all of that, I think Kubernetes has a huge role to play. So that's sort of the dark horse or the elephant in the room that we should probably talk about more from that context.
Alan, here's the part of this thing that I'm struggling with. So just because I downloaded maybe OpenTelemetry and maybe I've got some other tool from the landscape doesn't really make me cloud native, right? I mean, I guess I am, but I'm not really. So, do we need to rethink or maybe redefine what it truly means to be cloud native in the sense that I've got workloads that can dynamically scale up and down because, I'm leveraging Kubernetes to the full extent, and there's just a different level of maturity here that cloud native really signifies that, gets lost in the data.
Mike, I wrote an article during KubeCon in Atlanta in November, I guess that was. Rankled some of the people at the CNCF, as you know. But the real point of the article was, look, there's more to cloud native and there's more to KubeCon than Kubernetes today. The fact of the matter is OTel, OpenTelemetry, which is the second biggest project in the CNCF, is growing much faster than Kube is even. And Kube's growing, make no mistake. This survey bears it out, and they put it out for that reason. But when you take OTel and Prometheus and Grafana and all of the observability projects together, it is like a Saturn to KubeCon's Jupiter, right? And the question then becomes, is CNCF big enough for the two of them? Do we need to break out the observability projects? Because Mike, to your point, does that really make you cloud native, or does that just make you a good user of observability? Because they're independent of Kubernetes. A lot of the other 200-odd projects do revolve around Kubernetes, right? Like Moons of Jupiter. But the OTel and the observability stuff is its own gravity well, and so that's what it is. But the thing about this adoption is I don't think anyone's surprised to hear 82% of organizations are deploying Kubernetes-based infrastructure. It's been a couple of years now where if any new greenfield projects you're developing are probably done, 80% of them, and the survey bears it out. 75-80% are based, are on a kube infrastructure. What's really is the Kubernetes clusters. So how many clusters of Kubernetes are running in a given app, in a given infrastructure? Used to be 1, 2, 3, got very hairy. You got people running dozens of clusters, hundreds of clusters of Kubernetes. And that's not easy, right? Kubernetes isn't easy to begin with. This is really hard. So to see in this survey that people are running clusters like that is really the sign of maturity more than the 82% number.
I was going to make another point. I was taking some notes before I came to this discussion. The 82% number is not surprising. You're absolutely right, Alan. But what caught my attention is 66% of respondents are running at least some AI inference workloads on Kubernetes clusters.
Right. And that's the key is Kubernetes going to be the orchestrator for our AI infrastructure? Or I think back to CUDA, I think NVIDIA was making a play for CUDA to be the orchestration layer, the orchestrator, the Kubernetes for AI infrastructure.
That again goes back to the expansion of the NVIDIA moat, right?
Yeah.
Does the world go in that direction is the question, right?
NVIDIA is betting on red and black, right? They bought the people who make Swarm, which is the alternative to Kubernetes in the HPC world. And that they have invested a lot of stuff in Kubernetes. But let me come full circle here on that last session. Chris, if I have a monolithic application running on a virtual machine, can I not use something like Claude to reverse engineer it in, maybe more than 30 minutes, but maybe an hour, so it turns into a lovely cloud native application that I can run on Kubernetes? Just thinking.
Yeah. In short, yes. If you can't do it now, you'll be able to do it in the future. But that takes us back to the last segment. You have to decide if you want to maintain it and support it, or if you'd like someone else to be the expert at that.
But it could certainly convert it to a microservices based model, which would lend itself well to that. But to me, the question is, do you fix what ain't broke? Why? Why would you do it?
Do you have nothing else to do? Is all the rest of is everything else on your business
just because Timmy jumped off the bridge? Are you gonna? Are we back to that again?
At least the theory is that the application will scale up and down and cost less to run because it runs cloud native, versus a monolithic app running on a virtual machine where you've got a bunch of static resources dedicated to it, and it's expensive.
All right, so let me. I was a little late coming on set today because I was having a meeting with our video team. And I was hammering home that I want us to do editing of videos using AI. I want the AI to edit the videos. They're like Textron Gang. When do we switch from a full screen of Mike to the panel shot to Chris talking? Should be easy enough. Whoever's talking gets the main screen. And then when no one's talking or there's people talking, it goes to the back. It should be something AI could do. I don't need a person doing it. And we went back and forth and back and forth. And then came the real kicker. A lot of our videos, not yours, Mike, because you do yours on your computer, but a lot of our videos that we shoot here in studio are shot in 4K. They may not be played in 4K on your computers because streaming 4K is not easy and your computer may not play 4K video. But we shoot them here in studio in 4K to have the highest quality to begin with possible. And those 4K videos, the average 4K video is somewhere between 16 and 20 gigabytes. Now, AI could edit because it's a relatively simple edit, but uploading that 16 to 20 gigs to the AI engine and what AI is going to cost us to edit through a 16 to 20 gigabit file, and it's actually cheaper to have a human do it.
Yeah.
And that is the kicker. Until AI is economically cheaper to do it at a high quality like that, we shouldn't. Just because we could doesn't mean we should.
So you mean spending $10 million to replace a couple of baristas in a coffee shop doesn't make a lot of economic sense?
Exactly. But we're going to scale it because
Yeah.
look, this is the .com all over again. It costs me $1 for every 80 cents I sell, but I'm going to make it up in scale. Well, you're not. Until we
Yeah.
get that right, you're not doing it.
It comes full circle, right? To your first question, to block A when we were
Right.
talking, right? It's about the money at the end of the day, whether we like it or not. It's about money.
Yeah.
So
So I
telling me
don't
should
know
go-
if we should convert it to cloud native just because we can.
So we shouldn't go
Yeah.
build all those massive AI data centers that all these vendors are planning and investing billions and billions of dollars anymore.
Well, look at all the jobs it creates.
Oh, okay, that's true.
Construction, right?
all right.
Oh God! All right, let's end it on that note. Let's end it right there. Hey, gang, thanks. This was a lot of laughs. This was fun. It was good hearing smart people talk about these things. I hope you've enjoyed it out there. We've got TechStrong TV following up. Sid, Kate, Chris, thank you. Mike, as always, thank you. I think we've got Tech Field Day this week coming up, so stay tuned for that. Hey, there's a new episode of Mitchell and I Still Cyber, starring this lady, Kate Scarcella, in this episode. You might want to check out on TechStrong TV. And we'll be back tomorrow with more gang. Until then, this is Alan Shimel. We're out.